This is your spiritual game plan, and I'm your host, Sherry Fletcher. Change. It happens to all of us. You've invested your time and energy into an important role, sometimes for years. Then suddenly it's time for you to move on. Maybe you've worked hard on a dream, and now your path is taking a new turn, but the dream isn't going with you. Perhaps you've raised your kids, and now they've moved on, but your empty nest is filled with parent care. Maybe you're in the middle of diaper changes and laundry piles. If you find yourself asking questions like, where do I fit in anymore? Am I even relevant? How do I find my purpose now? You are in the right place. This is the show for women in a season of transition. I believe that while your roles in life will change, your purpose is eternal. I'm here to help you understand just how intentionally you were made by a creator with a game plan. Through interviews and inspirational guests, we'll discover ways to help you unlock the purpose God placed in you, develop a game plan for your life's calling, and embrace the intentional masterpiece you were created to be. If you've started out the new year wanting to improve your health and your spiritual life, then I'm glad you're here. I'm talking with Janet McHenry, the author of Prayerwalk. It was by praying and walking that Janet was freed from her depression and fear, changed her marriage, and was given tools to walk confidently and purposefully every single day. Janet has been prayer walking for more than 13 years and is the leader of her church's prayer ministry. Her business, Looking Up, is there to help you find personal strength by daily studying God's Word and having a vibrant life in prayer. You are going to be so blessed by my talk with Janet McHenry. Janet, I am so glad to have you here. And you are my first guest for season 2 on the Your Spiritual Game Plan podcast. So thank you for joining me.
I'm so delighted to be here. Thank you so much.
I met you 2 years ago at a speaker's workshop when I was and still am a newbie in the speaking area, but I have not written a book. And you, on the other hand, have written about 24. Is that right?
Right.
Yep, 24 books. And so I remember being very intimidated when I found that out, but yet you were anything but intimidating. You had such encouraging words for me, and you continue to be an encouragement in my life. And so I am so excited to be able to have you give those words of encouragement to my listeners today. So thank you. I would love it if you would tell my listeners a little bit about you and your family, where you're living, and how God has used your ministry since the pandemic started.
Well, first, let me just say that you were an inspiration to me, the way that you would get up and speak and inspire. And I was like, wow, I want to be like her when I grow up.
Thank you.
So, but a little bit about my family. We live here in the Sierra Valley, which is the largest alpine valley in North America. It's about an hour north of Lake Tahoe. So if you're familiar with Lake Tahoe, you can picture Lake Tahoe with tree-studded mountains, but with no water. And instead, there's a series of cattle ranches sprinkled throughout our valley. It's a beautiful place, and right now it's covered a little bit with snow. And my husband, in fact, is one of those ranchers here in the valley. And I worked here at the local high school as an English teacher for more than 20 years, and actually even taught all of my children. All 4 of our kids endured me as an English teacher. And it was a great life, but I really am enjoying being home right now, doing full-time writing and blogging and ministering from my little office here in the Sierra Valley.
I like how I was talking to Amy Carroll, and she said, the churches aren't shut down, they're deployed. Mm-hmm. And I just think that has been what we've been able to do now through Zooming and podcast, even though some of the meetings and the gatherings have not been able to happen. They've been deployed. And I've seen that a lot. And I think, have you found that with your ministry being able to do more online?
Yes, actually, 2020 has provided some really interesting kinds of experiences and opportunities for me. And I found it fascinating that the Wall Street Journal, in fact, published not just 1, but 2 articles on the importance of prayer and how people were finding solace and direction and strength through the practice of prayer. And also people were getting out and walking in their communities, and because they couldn't go to their gym, so they got outside to go do some walking. So, and that completely syncs with what I do, because I have been prayer walking and write about that and speak about that, and have for the last 22 years.
And that's what we're going to share today. And so I'm really excited. I like to ask my guests some fun facts just to get to have a little bit of your personal side. And so one of them was that you undertook a pretty big project back in November and you planted some bulbs. And I'm going to say that very lightly, some bulbs. And I'm sure as this airs in January, it's a little bit too early to see all of the fruit of your labor. But I found it interesting how you planted each one. So share a little bit about that.
I had to plant each of those 275 bulbs with a lot of prayer. At first, I was just like huffing and puffing with my little shovel. The ground was like cold, number one, so it was hard to dig, and it was dry. And I thought, how am I even going to get this job done? And it occurred to me that it was going to take some time. And so in the same way that when I walk, I pray, I thought, Janet, just pray. Pray for your community. Pray for people as they're driving by. Pray for walkers out there. Pray for your neighbors. And I visually imagine myself walking through my neighborhood and praying for each of the houses there. So each of those 275 bulbs was planted with a lot of love and a lot of prayer. And because I have a black thumb, I'm hoping that at least 10% of them actually show up in the spring. We will see.
Oh, I have 2 black thumbs. I feel sorry for any plant that comes near my house or my yard. But I do look forward to, I'm hoping you post a picture of those tulips so that we can see what prayer tulips look like. Or bulbs, whatever
I
you
definitely
do.
will. I will share some various kinds of series of the progress of the bulbs as they come up. So
Wonderful. I ask one question of each guest, and that is, looking back in your life, how far back can you see the very purpose that you are living out today in who you have always been?
That is so interesting, because you don't necessarily put all those pieces together right away until you have an opportunity to think about God's fingerprints throughout your lifetime. When I think back to my childhood and I think about the possible fingerprints of God in my life, and in regard to my call to write, it must have been that initial nudge, perhaps through my grandmother, Edith. She was a very strong-minded woman. I have been compared negatively to her for years, but the one positive thing that she did was she issued a challenge to all of her grandchildren to write her letters. I found out later that there was actually a contest involved, and the grandchild who wrote her the most letters would get her authentic Finnish costume. So that authentic Finnish costume actually sits on a dress form, an antique dress form in my entry hall. And it's a reminder to me as I go and come through those doors that I am called to write, and that God even had that in mind as when I was a child, because I was not that kind of person who said, oh, I always wanted to write. I've been more of a task-oriented kind of a writer, just get it done. Have an idea, put it together, do a proposal, send it out. I don't necessarily sit compulsively every single day and write page after page in a journal. I'm not that kind of writer. So it took God a lot of nudging in my lifetime to convince me of this.
I love looking back to writing your grandma. That's really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
So as this airs, it is January, and I know that at least I am very hopeful for a year of restoring. I'm hoping that this is a restoration year, but January is also known for New Year's resolutions. And a lot of those resolutions center around fitness and health. As if any commercial you watch will remind you that. But unfortunately, not always are those resolutions kept all year or for life. But years ago, you decided to make a resolution that it stuck. And I believe that it stuck because God was the solution in that resolution for you. And I would love if you would share how that resolution combined both physical health and spiritual growth and why it has been so successful for you.
Well, about 22 years ago, last fall, I actually found myself in a physical mess, was huffing and puffing, going up and down stairs. I needed painkillers to get to sleep because my hips and joints screamed at me so much. I was overweight. And the worst moment, I think, was when I stepped out my back door one day and found myself in a crumpled heap because my knee had given way. So I knew I needed to do something about my health. But there was also this sense that God was calling me to spend more time with him. So being that multitasking woman, I decided, okay, I'll get up a little bit earlier tomorrow, 15 minutes, and I'll go out and walk. And I will pray while I walk. You see, I thought I could sort of take care of prayer, and it would be done for the day. So that kind of mindset changed, though, one day when I was walking a few weeks later down Main Street in my community. And I saw a young man pull up in his little pickup truck and park in front of the little daycare center, which is called Toddler Towers, which is pretty funny because it's only a one-story building. But he handed over this little blanketed bundle from the back seat, and then he gave it over to the daycare worker, Cheryl, up on the sidewalk. I knew these people. I knew this was a hard thing for this single dad. And I knew that he was going to be commuting off into Reno and spending at least 10, 11, maybe 12 hours away from his little girl every single day. And as he handed this little girl over to Cheryl, the little girl said, "Bye, Daddy, I love you." And it hit me right then that God had me out in the streets of my community, less for the minus of my prayers, my marriage, my job, my kids. Won't they behave, God? Less for the minus of my prayers, but more for the needs of others around me. So I began opening up my eyes and praying for the business people up and down Main Street, the people in the homes. Some of them I knew were going through some pretty tough circumstances. I prayed for the loggers heading out into the woods. I prayed for the lumber mill workers heading into the mill. Prayed for those who were commuting off into Reno, which is about an hour from us. And God, at that point, began to give me a vision for my community. That was my ministry, to pray for the people in my town. And when God calls you to something, you just keep going. And every single day, I have to be honest, every single day, it's a battle. But I am reminded every single day that this is my ministry. And if I don't pray, who will? So I get up and I walk and I head out.
That is so inspiring. Thank you. I need to do that because I've just moved and I'm in a new place, and so I'm having to find the motivation to get out and keep walking because I'm so used to walking in my own space. But I will remember those words, and I will have a different take on that. So has prayer always been a lifestyle for you? I know you said before then it kind of seemed like you had to get it and check it off your list, but has prayer been a key part of your life all along?
No, it hadn't really, more probably like most busy folks, it was on the run, it was pretty much you hit a wall, you hit a need, or you hear of someone, falling apart, and then you pray, which isn't a bad thing. But actually to have a chunk of time with God every single day, and whether that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, it's certainly better than just everything on the fly, right? And you have the opportunity when you devote a certain amount of time to prayer to be able to hear from him as well. For example, lately, as I've been heading out the door and I just say, God, show me the needs. He says, I just want you to praise today. I just want you to hear, hear from me. Listen, I just want you to praise. Yesterday, it was just, I just want you to give thanks. So I opened up my eyes, and that's what prayer walking is. It's praying on site with insight, as Steve Hawthorne would say. Praying on site with insight, asking God for the needs of the people around you, whether you're literally walking or not. Maybe you're just in a Walmart line, and to be able to become more sensitive to others around you. It definitely is an outward intercessory kind of attitude.
I love how you said that God just told you to say thank you, because that is exactly what happened to me yesterday. I get up really, really early in the morning to have my prayer and devotion. And that's usually when I get some sort of inspiration of writing. And I literally was walking up the stairs going, I don't even know what to pray about anymore right now. And my sister-in-law had helped pack me. And I opened my Bible. I wanted to start looking at Luke just to get into the season. But a note that she had wrote while she was helping me pack, it opened up to that note, which I don't know why before now it hadn't. Of course, it's God. But it was on Psalms 107, and it just said prayer of thanksgiving. And it just said, thank the Lord. And it was like 5 different times, give thanks to the Lord, give thanks to the Lord. And it was like God was saying, just today, just give thanks. It was just so powerful. So when you said that, that's what made me think of. And I love how God speaks to us through that way. I have always been a walker. My mom is a walker and a fast walker. And so I learned to walk pretty fast. But in 2006, I started running. And to this day, I don't get into any kind of a rhythm until about mile 3. And so, I have been running since 2006, but I do not even enjoy the first 3 miles. Every time I don't enjoy them. And around mile 4, that's when I start getting into my rhythm. I start getting what people refer to as a runner's high. And I can honestly tell you, after about mile 4, if I can get past mile 4, I can keep going and get into higher miles. And in your book, Prayer Walk, Becoming a Woman of Prayer, Strength, and Discipline, you had a chapter called the Spiritual Endorphins. And you share about a cloud that was vanishing. And I loved that in the context for me in my mile 4, that there's going to be times I don't feel like doing this, but if I keep enduring, I get those endorphins. So I would love if you share what changes you experienced in your life from prayer walking and what that cloud was that vanished.
Well, the spiritual endorphins is kind of a term that I coined when I'm referring to the fact that you not only feel better when you walk back through your front door, and I also walk pretty quickly. It annoys a lot of people.
Yeah, same here.
Who try to walk with me. I once in a while I'll do a little running, like from one power pole to another. That's kind of how I gauge it. I'll do, or maybe 2 power poles and then walk for a while. But it's a very slow jog. But so you come back in feeling better, feeling stronger, feeling healthier, and then, the difference with when you add prayer into the mix is that your outlook goes from the minus of your prayers to the needs of the others in your community. And you feel in partnership with the Lord Jesus Christ as you are interceding for your community. So that's the difference. And one day, that when I knew that I had the depression that had clouded most of my adult life had lifted, I was in the kitchen. It wasn't even 7 o'clock in the morning. And our son Joshua came in. He's our 3rd child. And he said, Mom, what are you doing? And I looked down, I looked at him, and I said, making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And he said, no, Mom, you were singing. And he kind of shook his head and walked away like, what's with her? And the thing was, I was singing before 7 o'clock in the morning. Me, a non-morning person, Me, the person who would say, I'm not a morning person. But then one day I said to someone, I'm not really an evening person either. I have like one good hour in the middle of the day, and that's lunch hour, and then it's done. But so that cloud of depression vanished. And also fears, irrational fears that would keep me from moving forward as an individual. How do I explain it? I mean, there's a difference between godly caution and irrational fear. Godly caution is like, okay, so your kid starts driving and you're concerned, right? You should be. It's a scary time of life. But irrational fears are, for me, like when I'd be driving along and I'd be thinking, okay, when the tornado comes, where will I go? I live in Northern California in the mountains. We don't have tornadoes. We lived in Kansas for a while. And so I'm always the type of person who likes to be prepared. But the thing was, that was silly. That was dumb. And I was walking one day, and when I was walking in the dark one morning, it was about 5 o'clock, and I got to this one really dark area. And that was an area that I had to kind of spiritual warfare myself through, because I would sense this oppression. Like the enemy was telling me to give up, go home. It's dark. It's scary. Something might happen. Just quit. You're a quitter. I'd hear that. And I began praying against that. But one morning I got there and I realized that sense was gone, because in fact, it had driven me deeper into prayer. So the enemy knew that he didn't have control over that power point of my life as well. So spiritual endorphins, I believe in them. Walking and praying for your community turns your life completely, it flips it around again from that minus of your prayers, my kids, my marriage, my job, my worries, all that those might be, to a focus on others, their needs, and the concerns of your community as a whole. Perhaps your community, maybe there's a hold of alcoholism, maybe there's crime, maybe there's a sense of giving up, disinterest, or whatever that might be. God will show you when you walk and pray.
That's wonderful. And as this airs, we're going to be either before or after the inauguration, and it just seems like right now it just seems like people are more interested in picking sides than really looking at the community as a whole, and be a person as a whole, and realizing, that they're a child of God. And so, how would you take about that in this time of inauguration and all the uncertainty? What are some ways that you would pray for your community as you walk through it?
I would pray your will be done. And I was reading in Acts today when Paul was leaving Caesarea, and the believers there they wanted him to stay. They didn't want him to go to Jerusalem. They feared for his life. They appreciated his teaching and his fellowship. They didn't want him to leave. But finally he said, I must go. And they finally said, God's will be done. And I think that reminded me of Jesus' first prayer on the cross. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And then, into your hands I commit my spirit, his third prayer. You put yourself in God's hands and you trust him for whatever will come. You trust your community for what he will do through your community. You may not like what you're seeing going on around. You may see half your community feeling one way, half another, and maybe even you yourself have mixed emotions. But the thing is, God has been faithful in the past. He is with us now, and therefore he will be with us in the future, and he will take care of us no matter what.
Thank you. Such powerful words. So as we wrap it up, there was something that you mentioned in your book about the benefits of prayer walking with a partner. And I can tell you that's one thing I have missed moving, is when I've left behind a huge running group. And we would pray together and share stories and share situations and give each other advice and lift each other up. And we referred to it as our pavement therapy time. But, having those friends waiting for me. And a lot of times I lived on a dead end road with trails. So they'd all be in my driveway and I knew they were going to be out in my driveway. That kept me from giving up. So if someone is listening and they want to incorporate prayer walking into this new year lifestyle resolution, what advice would you give them about maybe partnering up, or where do they go about looking for someone to partner with them on this?
Several places you can look, perhaps you go to the gym with someone. Maybe you don't want to pay that gym fee anymore, so you and friend agree to hit the roads instead. Maybe it's someone you naturally have as a prayer partner, or someone in your small group. Both of you need some good exercise, so you make that commitment together. Perhaps you are in a position where you're ready to mentor a younger woman, and that would be a great time to do that. Again, multitasking, you're not only getting that opportunity to share your experience with that younger woman, but you can also get some good exercise together. Or flip that around. Maybe you're a younger woman, you need a mentor in your life. And so you ask someone, hey, will you walk with me and share some of your experience, as to how that you have grown stronger in your faith. So there are lots of places to look like that. I have had over the years various different prayer partners as I've been walking. One was a teacher, and so we spent one day walking the schools and praying for each of the teachers by name. And that was great because she was a teacher at the elementary school, I at the high school. And so together we knew some of the particular site needs that those schools had. Another was an older friend of mine. She actually was old enough to be my mom. And so I just want to encourage anyone, even if you think you're too old, that she was starting at that time, in her later 70s at that time. She's since passed away. So I don't currently have someone I regularly walk with, but here's the thing. I know that Jesus is waiting for me on my front porch. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. And if anyone will hear my voice and open the door at ... I will go, walking with her. Flip that scripture around, excuse that change. But I do envision the Lord as my personal trainer in prayer. I've studied his life, his prayer life, what he taught about prayer, his prayers and his prayer practices. And I know that he was faithful. And I know that he needed time alone with God. Scripture tells us that he had to be with his Father. So I know that he wants me to spend time in prayer, and that using his name and asking for his inspiration and his advocacy along with me only strengthens my prayers.
Thank you very much. Thank you for spending some time with me today, and for being a kickoff for the new year. And I know it's going to be inspiring for everyone. So thank you for joining me.
I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in as I talk to Janet McHenry. I hope that you are as inspired as I was to just get up and get going. I like how she pointed out that it was after she started walking that God gave her a vision for her community and the needs of the people in her town, and just simply praying for them. I also liked how she mentioned that there are days when she doesn't want to get up, but she knows that God is at the door knocking. And like Janet says, when God calls you to do something, you just keep going. If you'd like to learn more about how to connect with Janet and purchase her book, Prayer Walk, you'll find links in the show notes. If you have not subscribed already to Your Spiritual Game Plan podcast, please do so at this moment so you do not miss up and coming episodes. When you leave a rating and an honest review, that helps me serve you better, as well as helps others find the podcast. During today's episode, did a friend come to mind who you know would be blessed with today's message? If so, be sure to share the link with them. Listeners like you sharing links with their friends is how this podcast can reach more people. Be sure to subscribe to my mailing list to receive weekly updates, exclusive content, and new episodes delivered right to your inbox. Thank you so much for tuning in to Your Spiritual Game Plan, the podcast that helps you understand that God's got a plan and you have a purpose in it.